Thanks so much. With us now to discuss, Democratic Congresswoman Sara Jacobs of California, who's part of a bipartisan congressional delegation traveling to Copenhagen, Denmark, later this week. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. Let me play for you something that President Trump said about Greenland this afternoon in the Oval Office.
The problem is there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland. But there's everything we can do. You found that out last week with Venezuela. There's everything we can do about things such as that. Not going to happen. We're not, I can't rely on Denmark being able to fend themselves off.
Congresswoman, isn't that the scenario that NATO was developed to avoid? I mean, if the Chinese or Russians tried to occupy Greenland, Denmark would invoke, what is it, Article 4?
Article 5.
Article 5, and an attack on one is an attack on all, and the U.S. would get involved.
That's exactly right. If Russia or China were to try and attack Greenland, that is exactly what NATO is for. Denmark would invoke Article 5, and all of the partners in NATO, including the United States, would then come to Greenland's defense. It's why it makes no sense for President Trump to be doing this. This is just another one of his vanity projects, like putting his name on the Kennedy Center. There's no real strategic reason for this. We have a treaty with the Danes, a 1951 treaty, that actually allows us to do basically whatever we feel we need to do militarily in Greenland. And so there is literally no military purpose for what Donald Trump is trying to do with Greenland.
So what are you looking to accomplish on this trip to Denmark?
Yeah, so this is a bipartisan congressional delegation, and we feel like it's important to go and show that on a bipartisan basis, the members of Congress do not support President Trump's plan, that the majority of Americans do not support President Trump, and that we stand with our ally, the Danes, and with the people of Greenland, who should get to decide for themselves who governs them. Denmark actually was one of the countries that after 9/11, they sent their own troops to Iraq and Afghanistan, and actually were one of the highest per capita losses of life in Afghanistan. That's Danish soldiers that were killed instead of American soldiers. That's what we're talking about here. That's the kind of partnership we've had. And we want to make sure that they know that there are many, many of us on both sides of the aisle who appreciate that and respect that and are going to do everything we can to make sure that that alliance is preserved.
In America today, the country's so divided. 40% of the country automatically supports everything President Trump says and does. 40% of the country automatically opposes everything President Trump says and does, as a general rule. But this new Reuters Ipsos poll shows that when it comes to U.S. efforts to acquire Greenland, only 17% approve of the effort to acquire Greenland. And in terms of whether or not it's a good idea for the U.S. to take Greenland using military force, that goes down to 4%. I mean, these are numbers that you just don't see in polling.
Well, that's exactly right. And, there's estimates that it would cost about $700 billion to buy Greenland. Think about all of the things we could do here, investing in America, in housing and healthcare and childcare for the American people with $700 billion. I think the American people are right. I think there's a bipartisan consensus in Congress that this doesn't make sense, and hopefully that will be enough to stop Donald Trump from this vanity project.
All right, Congresswoman Sara Jacobs, Democrat of California, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.